Welcome, everybody. Hope you're doing well tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Good to see you guys out there. Mia, nice to see you. In or on Israel, that's the question. Hi there, Alejandro. Thank you to Flick Off and the other moderators helping out tonight. Chime in the chat. Let me know if you have any trouble with my volume. So for those of you just joining in, I'm Jake Morphonios. This is the Blackstone Intelligence Report. So we've got some breaking news out of Palestine, Israel. There were a couple of rockets that were fired off tonight out of the Gaza Strip toward Israeli territory. And so in response, Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system, which is financed primarily by the American taxpayer, because we do give Israel $5 billion a year for their defense and security. But the Iron Dome missile defense system was activated. Volume is good. Volume is good. No audio. You guys. And so anyway, the missile defense system was activated to try and intercept the rocket. So what I'm going to do is, Ernie Truth says, man, Jake, you said it yesterday. Be on the watch. I'm telling you guys, this is prime time for something to happen. We'll see. We'll see. And I'll get into why this could turn into something. But then again, this could be an absolute nothing burger. There's two ways of looking at it. Israelis look at it one way. Other people look at it a different way. So we'll talk about this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a brief introduction. Then I'm going to play a couple of video clips that last about roughly 2.5 minutes. These are clips that I've gathered together from cell phone footage that has been posted from Israel showing some of what happened. And after I play the video clips, what we're going to do is talk about it. I'll provide a little analysis to put the incident in context, explain why we have reason to believe that this could be the beginning of some kind of escalation, and also, conversely, why the reasons that this could be going nowhere. So, first of all, I'll say the situation is still fluid. We don't know everything. This event just took place within the last hour and a half, 2 hours ago. So here is what we know right now. What we know is very little. What we know is that nobody is exactly sure what happened. And here's why it's so confusing. You've got multiple citizens, a lot of Israelis, who are reporting that they know that there were up to 5 rockets that were fired off from Gaza. Now, in the fog of war, you can get some things wrong. And it's possible that these various reports, people from different perspectives, different geographical perspectives, think that there were multiple rocket attacks when in fact there were only a couple. And that is the position of the Israeli Defense Forces. They put out on Twitter, they confirmed that there were only 2 rockets that had been fired from Gaza. There are, however, a number of open source in Israeli intelligence assets that provide analysis, and they are quite furious over this IDF statement because they're saying it's bullcrap, that there is sufficient evidence that there were more than 2 rockets fired, and they are suggesting that for some reason the IDF is lying to the public about these additional rockets that were fired. Now, as time passes, as we get into tomorrow, we'll be able to see evidence. If there were more rockets that were fired, if we ought to have some more forensic evidence that is presented that would confirm that. So all I will say is that I agree that something does seem a little fishy about what happened tonight, because I've been reading reports myself the last couple hours trying to match up the government claims to what we're seeing in the citizen cell phone footage, places where the sirens actually went off, and places they didn't go off in Israel where it should have gone off. And just these various facts don't really connect in the way that that they did a number of other times that I've looked at some of these rocket attacks. So we know at least this much. There were at least 2 rockets. One rocket was fired off from the Gaza Strip. In fact, let me bring up Google Earth here and I'll show you as we go along. Hold on a second. Let me get this here. All right. Back this up some. So here's Israel. Palestine is divided into 2 primary geographical sections. You've got the West Bank, and then over here you have the Gaza Strip, which during biblical times they never conquered it. This is where the Philistines lived, and they just couldn't get them out. In fact, when the 12 tribes traveled from Egypt through the Sinai Peninsula up, invaded Canaan, and the 12 tribes took the lands of Canaan as to dole them out to the various 12 tribes. The tribe that was given this area around here was the tribe of Dan. Dan was the second most populous of the 12 tribes, and they were kind of the war tribe. They were the tribe known for having the most military capability. And so Dan was given this section over here. Only Dan was incapable of dislodging the Philistines. So in time, most of the families of the tribe of Dan went up here and settled. They displaced some people that were up here. And so today, the northern Israel's where Dan ended up. Before they merged with the Phoenicians and went off and became a lost tribe. But anyway, this is the Gaza Strip. And the places, the geography that we'll be talking about is you've got the northern end of the Gaza Strip. You've got the Mediterranean over here. We've got the city of Ashkelon, the city of Ashdod, Palmishim Beach, Bat Yam, and then Tel Aviv. So here is what we know about what has happened. One rocket was fired from the Gaza Strip, from up north. It passed over the skies, over Ashkelon. Ashkelon, just for geographical reference, this is only 8 miles. This is 8 miles north of the Gaza Strip. It's 31 miles south of Tel Aviv. So the rocket goes over. It goes over the skies of Ashdod. Sirens did not go off when this first rocket is passing over. And that's why a lot of these comments that I'm seeing, there's a lot of curiosity. Why didn't the sirens go off? Should have triggered the sirens. The government authorities are saying that the reason that the sirens didn't go off is because this rocket wasn't actually going to pose any threat to the cities on the ground. No significant threat. Generally speaking, the reason that these sirens go off is to warn the public of the potential falling debris, because the Iron Dome shoots missiles up that intercepts it, hits the little rockets, and the falling shrapnel from these intercepts ends up posing more danger than the rockets themselves. These rockets that get fired off are almost never sophisticated rockets. They don't have guidance systems. So generally they pose no threat to citizens on the ground because they hit outside into these uninhabited areas. In fact, with the thousands of rockets that have been shot off since the second Intifada, around 2002, roughly, there have only been, of thousands and thousands of rockets, there have been 28 people to be killed over those 2 decades. Very rare for someone to get killed by these rockets. But anyway, Israel fired 3 Iron Dome interceptor missiles to try and hit this first rocket. All 3 interceptors self-destructed. That means they didn't accomplish the goal of stopping the rocket. So this first rocket strikes the ground up here at Palmichim Beach. This is between Ashdod and Bat Yam. And I'll show you photos of the impact and also a little video of where that rocket hit. The second incident that took place in the skies after the rocket was fired off, it went up here over Bat Yam, or close to it, was approaching Bat Yam. Bat Yam is this city on the Mediterranean Sea coast. It's in this central coastal strip just south of Tel Aviv. This is part of the Gush Dan metropolitan area. So anyway, the rocket passes over Ashkelon, passes over Ashdod, here in the Shefelo region. Sirens on the ground did go off this time as this rocket passed over. 2 Iron Dome interceptor missiles were fired at the second rocket. Both missed the target again, and they self-destructed. The rocket itself hit the ground in an uninhabited area, and the mayor of Bat Yam came out and he said, listen, the public doesn't have any reason to panic. He said that the Iron Dome wasn't activated due to rocket fire toward Bat Yam. And this is one of these strange conflicting government statements that makes no sense to those who are investigating, trying to figure out what really happened. What we do see in videos is some burning debris on the side of a road, which, as far as I can tell, is rocket fuselage from an Iron Dome missile that self-destructed after it missed its target. Now, with this background information in mind, let me go back here and I'm going to play... Oops, wrong one. Let me play a couple minutes here of this. No civilian casualties.
כיפת ברזל, באלוהים, כיפת ברזל. באמא שלי, לא מאמין. תפסתי את זה במצלמה, לא מאמין. יואו, איזה פיצוצים. וואו. איזה פיצוצים, באלוהים. פאק.
טיל נפל עלינו. טיל נפל עלינו. טיל נפל עלינו.
טיל נפל עלינו בחוף. This is the rocket that hit the beach. And this is the fuselage from the Iron Dome missile. All right, and that's that. So let's talk about some of this, and here in a minute I'll bring. Let me go ahead and bring up photos now, and I'll show you these as we talk. All right, now why is that looking funny? Give me a second. Let me see if I can fix this. I don't know why it's doing it like that. Anyway, you can see on the ground here some some of the debris. And, oops, wrong way. There's another angle where you can see some of it. So, I'll show you some more pictures in just a minute, but after this, just in the couple minutes before I jumped on to start streaming the show, Israel did strike. The IDF carried out attacks against Hamas underground infrastructure and military posts in Gaza. Warplanes as well as helicopters carried out attacks. The IDF says that they are conducting an ongoing situational assessment and that they, quote unquote, remain prepared to operate against any terror activity. And again, this is really ticking off a lot of Israeli citizens that are, hardcore and want to see a firm response against the people of Gaza. Because this often happens where some of these rockets get popped off, and there is a response from the IDF, but it's kind of tepid compared to what Israel typically does, which is a grossly disproportionate response. With the chaos going on right now in Israel, there's two ways of looking at it. And this is where I was saying at the top of the show, there is debate among even Israelis about whether or not something like this is going to escalate into a greater military action. And that is with Netanyahu going through, just struggling right now with massive protests, citizens protesting Netanyahu because he is corrupt as hell, and he's in litigation, number of cases where he could very well end up in prison over it. While on the one hand, a military conflict could rally his base and also potentially unite people behind him, if it is perceived, on the other hand, that he's doing this just to try and distract from his domestic problems, there could be backlash to that, and the protests against him could get even worse. And that is why there are a lot of people in Israel who don't anticipate that anything significant is going to come from this. So, you can come down whichever side of the argument you want. I did see some reports that Hamas commanders have said that there were a number of strikes reported in Rafah. And so when there is an attack by Israel against Hamas or against Islamic Jihad, the ball goes back into the Palestinians' court, and the more militant factions like the PIJ, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is Sunni Islamist, they're more of the attitude that you return strike for strike. But these attacks from Israel were apparently retaliations against Hamas, which is runs the government there in Gaza. So let me get into a little bit of background here. If you've been following my reports lately, I've been talking about the suspicious meetings between U.S. diplomats, including the neocon envoy for Iranian regime change, Elliot Abrams, and the upcoming meetings of Secretary of State Mike Pompeo with their intelligence counterparts in the Gulf states of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, where Trump just gave billions of dollars worth of heavy warplanes and other things to beef up their arsenal. So we've got these U.S. diplomats meeting not only with Saudi intelligence, but also with Israeli intelligence. When Pompeo visits early this next week, among his meetings will be with the head of the Mossad. And that's unusual. That's unusual. That would be like, for example, the Sergei Lavrov, foreign minister of Russia, coming to the United States and meeting with our CIA director. Like, of all if you're a diplomat, you don't go meet with another nation's intelligence agency. You go meet with your diplomatic counterpart, the Secretary of State. So for Pompeo, who is former CIA director, to be going over to Israel to meet with, among other people, he'll meet with Netanyahu, but he'll meeting with the director of the Mossad. That's weird. That's weird, unless they've got something in the works. So anyway, we're looking at this. And then when you combine this with President Trump's post-election purge of the Pentagon, including the firing of Defense Secretary Mark Esper and his chief of staff and a lot of these other prominent figures in the State Department, in the Defense Department, and then Trump filling those positions with Trump loyalists just a couple of months before Joe Biden is set to take office, it raises concerns as to what is going on. What is in the works that would necessitate putting low-level Trump yes men into these positions of high authority in the Defense Department, while simultaneously you've got Trump's diplomats who are connected to U.S. intelligence going over, engaged in these high-level talks with the foreign intelligence counterparts from nations that are all positioned as the archenemies of Iran. You know, it is curious. I mean, you can't, as conspiratorial as all this sounds, you cannot look at it and not say, something weird is going on. One thing is certain, with a full week now of back-to-back anti-Iranian propaganda reports that I showed you in my last live stream, coming out of U.S. and Saudi and Israeli media outlets, all coordinated, as well as the Israeli assassination, or alleged, let me say that, alleged Israeli assassination in Iran of a supposed second in command of Al-Qaeda, which Iran completely says is total bullcrap. There is a lot of blaming of Iran going on right now. And there is, if Netanyahu wants to use this incident, this rocket attack tonight, to beat the drums of war against Iran, something that would justify some attack against Iran or Iranian interests, what they would do in Israel is blame this on, someone mentioned in the chat, PIJ. PIJ is the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. And the reason that right now the timing of this is strange, also just another strange coincidence, is that this week marks the 1-year anniversary that Israel carried out a brutal assassination of a Palestinian militia leader named Baha Abu al-Atta. Al-Atta was the local leader of the PIJ movement in Palestine, the Islamic Jihad movement in Palestine, in Gaza. Remember, PIJ, this is an Islamist group. They're actually, they were formed back in 1981 during the as Israel was going around, attacking Lebanon and all this stuff going on. PIJ was formed, and it is based in Syria. Headquarters is actually in Damascus. Now, how does this tie to Iran? Israel says that PIJ receives financial support from Iran. So if you want to blame Iran for rocket attacks, tonight's rocket attacks, for example, what you do is you say this: Iran finances PIJ. These attacks were from PIJ. Therefore, this is an Iranian attack on Israel. See what I'm saying? That's how you justify it. When you get into actual Gaza, though, PIJ, the organization, they have an armed militant wing of PIJ that carries out their attacks. And this armed militant wing is called the Al-Quds Brigades. Back in 2018, 2019, there were, you probably remember this, Israel got in big, they were shamed for it. They didn't actually get in trouble. USA always covers for them. But they got in trouble with human rights groups all around the world. They were condemned by Amnesty International, Red Cross. Everybody was condemning them because as the Palestinians were marching and going out to protest close to this border fence that Israel set up. There is no actual border there, but they established a fence. And if anyone came within 100 yards of it, doesn't matter if it was a woman, a man, a child, it doesn't matter if it was a nurse, didn't matter if it was someone clearly marked as press, didn't matter if they were in a wheelchair, Israel would shoot them. And they shot and maimed a bunch of Palestinians. So in response to this, the PIJ or the Al-Quds Brigades carried out attacks against some of these IDF snipers and their positions. And Al-Atta is the guy who coordinated those attacks. So on November 12th of last year, an Israeli warplane flew over Gaza, fired a missile, and blew up an apartment building where Al-Atta was living, killing not only him, but his wife, his 4 children. And let me see here. Let me get a picture of this guy for you. Bear with me. I got a couple pictures here. They'll look funny. Oh, and by the way, here are, I don't know why this, let me see if I can fix these pictures. I don't know. Before I started, everything looked good here. I don't know why it has stretched out like this. Let me see if I can. There we go. All right. There's that one messed up too. A couple of them fixed and then... Hold on. Sorry, I'm probably giving you whiplash going back and forth here. Okay. Well, you just have to look at it stretched out funny. Oh, it's not even going to let me show you the doggone pictures. Let me reload this. Sorry, bear with me. I want you to see some of these pictures. Here we go. Sorry, you got a black screen. I'll have some photos up in just a second. I'm going to set it up as a little slideshow here. Here we go. Okay. There he is. All right, this is Al-Atta. This is the guy who Israel assassinated. So they kill him, they kill his family. And at the same time, when they carried out this attack, Israel also flew into Syria to Damascus, and they blew up this apartment building as well because they wanted to target another PIJ member there. And so you, as you might imagine, even if they're after one person, blowing up a whole apartment building is going to hurt a bunch of different people. And there were multiple casualties. This was in November 12th, 2019, this particular attack. So anyway, it's possible that the rockets that were fired tonight really were the work of PIJ militants. It's possible it was Hamas. It's possible it was PIJ. Both have a history of shooting off some of these rockets. And it's possible that PIJ fired these rockets in protest of the slaying of their leader a year ago. Although these guys know you carry out these rocket attacks and there's going to be reprisals. So who knows? But given all the other evidence that Israel was already preparing some kind of military operation, it's also possible, if we want to put on our conspiracy hats for a second, it's possible that tonight's rocket attack was either in full or in part a false flag event perpetrated by the Mossad to provide some pretext or justification for a pre-planned action by Israel against Iran. Right? We just don't know. When it comes to Israel, anything is possible. So you're looking at this picture right here when the idea of Iron Dome is to shoot off these missiles, intercept the little rockets that are flying through the air from Gaza, and blow them up. And you can see here the spray pattern, how it's supposed to work. This is an Iron Dome rocket being shot off. You can see that. That's why I was saying earlier, the pictures of that what looks like fuselage from one of these Iron Dome rockets in those earlier photos. Now this is what it looks like where the one hit on the beach. There's the little crater in the sand. There's some of the remains of the rocket. There's another that's not real clear, but that's also from the scene. There's a close-up of some of it. This is, I didn't show these earlier. These are the pictures that were screwed up. This is PIJ. I think it's terrible branding, if branding was something that they were actually interested in. Of course, they're not, but with all of the images in people's minds of ISIS and how ISIS wore all black and everything, going out here dressed like this just looks horrible. But then again, that's just the case. Here they are. These pictures that I'm showing you now are from Gaza this week, just the last couple of days. You can see this picture here of Al-Ada. This is PIJ commemorating his assassination. So anyway. Just a couple pictures there. So who knows? The questions that are raised by some of the people that are looking at this already are could it be some kind of false flag? Could that explain the difference in the confusing reports of the rocket attacks coming from the civilians compared to what the IDF is claiming happened? Is it possible that PIJ shot the rockets off, but Netanyahu doesn't want to escalate this, so he's just blaming it on Hamas instead, so he doesn't strike PIJ. I mean, these are some of the things that I'm reading in Israeli social media, the people speculating about what's going on. They're asking, why were the sirens not set off? Why did they not have warning on the ground of incoming rockets at first? It was sporadic. Why was it that this incredibly expensive missile defense system that's supposed to be high-tech, why couldn't they hit these two little rockets? You know, they fired three Iron Dome interceptors at one of the rockets. All three missed. They fired two interceptors at the other rocket. They both missed. You know, 0 for 5 is terrible. So, if I was an Israeli, I would feel very disconcerted about this, that the sirens didn't go off and that Iron Dome can't even hit these little rockets. So, let me say this, and this may upset some people, but I do believe that Israel has the right to defend its civilian population from rocket attacks. You know, I am staunchly in support of the Palestinians when it comes to their right to statehood, the right of return for refugees, and everything else. But at the same time, as a Christian and as a peace activist, my prayers and my work is devoted to encouraging peace between the Jews and the Palestinians. And actions taken against the civilian population of either side is something that I cannot support. I cannot support it. And I ask that my viewers continue to be vocal in being principled. You know, we take a strong stand in favor of Palestinian rights. They are a people living under a harsh, brutal, seemingly never-ending military occupation by a militarily superior power that is backed up by the greatest empire in the history of the world. So if I have to take a side between the two, I'm going to take the side of the people whose lands have been stolen and who live in an atmosphere of constant humiliation on a daily basis, having to go through these checkpoints and being denied access to water, trash services, rolling blackouts, this kind of stuff. No question I'm going to side with the Palestinian people. But I do want there to be peace. And you cannot achieve peace if militant factions attack the Jewish civilian population. It's just not going to fly. Strategically, it's not going to work. And so for the sake of peace, for the good of the people of Palestine, I oppose this. And you have a very different sentiment in the West Bank. Then again, the people in the West Bank have kind of a different circumstance compared to Gaza, where things are arguably much more difficult for the whole of the population. And you know, as we talk about these areas, these lands that I've been mentioning, like earlier I was showing you, here, let me bring up Google Earth again. You know, anciently, we go way back before there was a Hebrew presence in this area, when it was still the Canaanites. You already had people living here before Moses brought the Israelites to the borders, and Joshua led them into Canaan and began basically a campaign of genocide against the native populations there. But these cities are ancient. Ashkelon, Ashdod, these are in the Bible. this is a conflict that has been going on for thousands of years and will continue. We know, if you're a Bible believer, you know this is going to continue going on until the end of this epoch of mankind's history on the earth, because ultimately this culminates in an epic war of nations of the earth gathering together to try and wipe this Jewish state from the earth, to eradicate them. And when you read the Bible, if the Bible is to play out the way that it is prophesied to happen, as these nations of the earth gather and fight against Israel, Israel is brought to its knees, and they are on the verge of annihilation at the time that the Messiah says, okay, they've suffered enough at this point. I have made promises in ancient times to not utterly forsake them. And so the Messiah returns and saves them from a final annihilation. And those that are that small remnant that is still alive has become so humbled by the circumstances, the gravity of what they've been going through, the horror of the mass death that has happened to their people. They are sufficiently humbled to repent and accept Jesus as their Messiah, acknowledge that their forefathers had crucified the Son of God. And from this point on, you have the 1,000 years, a millennium of peace, as the Messiah himself rules on the earth. So anyway, my point is, things are going to continue to be difficult in this area, at least if you are someone who is a Bible believer, which I am. But setting that aside, if you're someone who is, total atheist, there's two ways of looking at this. One way is, okay, maybe none of it's true, but you can't help but look at the way things are playing out geopolitically in the Middle East, and not come to your mind that maybe none of this is true, but the people are using the Bible and these end times prophecies as a doggone blueprint, a battle plan, because so many events are happening that match up in ways that are very uncanny. So whether it is secular, because the majority of the Zionist Jews are actually atheists. Not all, of course. There's the Orthodox and the ultra Orthodox, but the Forum Jews and others, they just a lot of atheism there, especially with the rising generations that don't acknowledge the existence of God. And you look at the Zionists of the 1800s. Theodore Herzl, he was an atheist. The Rothschilds were atheists. The people that financed the Zionist movement in the 1800s going into the 1900s, they were predominantly atheists. But still, despite being non-believers, things are rolling out just the way the Bible has predicted. But I'm not one to try and convince people to, like, hey, you need to. It's easy to take these biblical prophecies and use it like fear porn and scare the crap out of people. That, to me, is not what converts somebody. I can entice somebody with talks of the end times. My original channel was called the End Times News Report because it was dedicated to looking at the geopolitics of the Middle East and how these things are connected to ancient end times prophecies. But that, to me, is not the core of my faith. Whether or not any of that happens is inconsequential. My faith, the core of what I believe, is what Jesus taught, which is that I am part of a global network that God has created. I'm a human being. I am no better, no worse than anyone else. I am interconnected, and regardless of what another person does to me, to be kind or to be evil toward me, God says it is my job, if I am to do what he wants, to be a true follower of Christ, it is my job to love everybody, to be kind, to return kindness for evil. That doesn't mean that we let people abuse us. That doesn't mean that you don't defend yourself. Doesn't mean you fight when you need to fight. But it does mean that you stand for what is right without having hatred in your heart for your enemies. You pray for your enemies. You hope good things for your enemies, because it has the ripple effect of, if your enemy experiences a change of heart, that will end up benefiting the people that they hate. When hatred melts away, then you have the establishment of an atmosphere where peace can finally take hold. So this is why, despite my strong disagreement with the Zionist state and all of my criticism of the Zionist state, I still love the Jewish people. I still love the Palestinian people, regardless of what happens on either side. And I would help a dirty, rotten scoundrel out who has hurt me or hurt someone I love. I would try and help them, and I know that I can do this because I've done it. I have. It's been a real soul search for me over the years, trying to understand this, trying to learn this, and it's like God has given me plenty of chances to learn this hard lesson through life experience. I've shown you before, when I was a little kid, you see up here, you see this line on my head? I have got scars all around my head. I've got that one there. I've got one up here. I've got them on the side of my head. I've got them in the back of my head. Whereas a little kid in Miami, the first time I ever got beat up was I was 6 years old, or 6 or 7 years old, and a gang of kids surrounded me when I was doing nothing wrong. I was playing at my friend's house outside. They surrounded me and beat me in the head with rocks that some of them were so big, these kids had to use 2 hands to slam them against my head. Almost killed me. I was drenched in blood. Fortunately, they saw the blood and it scared them, and they ran. They took off. But I remember trying to find my way home, trying to wipe enough blood out of my eyes. And fortunately, I wasn't that far from my own house. I was maybe 5 or 6 houses down. And my friend that was there with me, Jorge, he ran ahead of me. He was yelling at me, "Go home, Jake, go home." He called me Yake. He was a little Cuban boy. "Run home, Yake, run home." I had my big wheel, my Dukes of Hazzard big wheel, in George's yard, Jorge's yard, but I couldn't see well enough to get on it right. So I was trying to find my way home, going down the sidewalk with blood everywhere, getting lightheaded from blood loss. And he ran ahead of me and told my mom, and she came and got me and took me to the hospital. And I'm Condon asked, what part of Miami? At that point, I was living in the Kendall area. I lived in a couple different areas, but that was in the Kendall area. But then in as a little kid, like it never occurred to me to hate my enemies. In fact, I didn't even know who I had never seen these kids before. I have no idea who they are or why they attacked me. But getting into, if you're familiar, any of you, whoever was asking what part of Miami, if you know Glades Middle School, when I was there, it was Glades Junior High. It was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And when I was at Glades, we had a lot of gang activity. We had a couple shootouts at school, tons of drugs. One of my best friends from elementary school had grown up. We grew up together, and his name was Charlie, and he was a drug dealer. He taught me tons of stuff. We'd sit around, and he'd like he'd show me this stuff. He's like, all right, this is a red devil, and I'd say, well, what does it do? Well, it does this. And I was like, well, why is it called a red devil if it's pink? And we're like, shut up, it doesn't matter. And I've tasted cocaine. By the time I was in 7th grade, I had tasted cocaine because so many of my friends brought coke to school. And the first time one of these, Samantha, I won't say her last name in case I don't want word to get out. The poor girl got expelled from public school as a result of this. But Samantha, one day in class before school started, 7th grade, or was it 6th? No, that was, I don't remember, was 6th or 7th. I've got my yearbook around here somewhere. But anyway, she she turned around. She had asked me one day, she had said, I've got cocaine. And I'm like, no, you don't. So she came in, pretty blonde-haired girl. Blonde hair, green eyes. I remember she was cute. But anyway, she sat in front of me. And so before school started, she turned around and she had this little vial and she said, I brought you some cocaine. And I said, yeah, right. And I'm assuming this is salt or sugar or something like that. So I opened it up and put some on my finger and put it on my tongue, and my tongue instantly went numb. And I was like, holy crap, you brought cocaine to school. So I said, get this away from me. And but some other kids in the class who were drug users, and this was a private school actually. She was banned from public school, went on a record, but she was also kicked out of this private school. Because in this class of, I think we had 10 students in class, a couple of them came back, they saw what was going on, and they were, give me some. And so she's distributing cocaine, and they're just sitting here putting it on their fingers, snorting it. And Mr. Brinkley, our teacher, who was ex-Marine, he had just gotten out of the Marine Corps, he's sitting up there. I'm like, oh man, this dude's paying attention. And he steps out. A couple minutes later, he steps back in with the principal. Samantha, will you come here, please? She leaves the room. It's the last time we ever saw Samantha. Never came back again. But anyway, Charlie was my friend at that school, and then we went to Glades together. And he got into dealing. He was smoking pot from 6th grade on, but he got into the harder stuff. And he one morning on the way to school, this would have been 8th grade. He I guess he had been dealing in someone else's territory, but they busted him up bad. Him and his friend David was with him. Beat them both up to a pulp. Ambulances came and took him off, and that was the last time I saw Charlie. The 80s, drugs in Miami, it was something. But anyway, at Glades, I would get picked on relentlessly because I was a very pale-skinned, blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy. I was the minority at that time. And so I was getting into fights. Not that I was initiating, but I was getting, attacked. I had experienced this. I moved back and forth between Miami and the Carolinas as a kid. A lot of instability during my childhood, family instability. Back and forth. And when I was in South Carolina, a bunch of redneck kids hated me. I came into the school there, 4th grade, 5th grade. First day of school, some kid I had never seen before came up and punched me in the mouth. Gave me a bloody lip. Busted lip. And I was like, oh, boy, this is going to be great. And then in 5th grade, we had a shared school bus that also picked up the high school kids, and these 9th or 10th graders, black guys, used to grab me by the back of the hair and put my face down on the bottom of the school bus, whatever you call it, the part you walk on, the floor of the school bus, and tell me to lick the ground, lick the dirt up, And so at Glades, I had been abused enough by people that I'm like, what the heck? What is this? And I never picked a fight with anybody. I never bothered anyone. I was shy. I was quiet. And so this one time, Cuban gang leader attacked me. And I managed to get him in a front headlock. That's back when I was watching WWF wrestling a lot. And I actually was doing a lot. My uncle built a wrestling ring in my grandmother's garage because I lived with her for a while. And we'd do professional wrestling matches. And so I knew wrestling. I didn't know how to fight. I knew wrestling. So this gang leader, he was out on the softball field during PE at Glades. He came charging at me, fists in the air. Whacked him across the face with my glove because it was clear he was going to try and hit me. And then he tried to tackle me, and that's when I got him in a headlock. And I just wailed on him, and it turned into a riot. Hundreds and hundreds of kids got into, it's a total melee. So I end up in the vice principal's office, and she said, this they're going to keep after you until you put one in their place. Until you knock, she said, this is what she told me. She's, black lady, firm, very stern. I mean, I was intimidated. I thought I was in big trouble with her when I went in. I didn't know. All I knew was when the PE teachers and everyone that came in finally, they had to bring in all these teachers to break everything up. When they finally got it separated and found how it started, me and this other guy got sent to, he saw the principal. I went to the vice principal. But she said, look, these gangs are going to keep picking on you, Jake, until, here's the first thing she said. She was making small talk with me. She said, so what do you want to be when you grow up? My stepfather at that time was the guy that I refer to as Rambo, the evil stepfather I had, who had been a CIA sniper assassin as part of the Phoenix program during Vietnam, who came home and was set up as a narc for Miami Vice, and who segued from that, went to law school and became a defense attorney, defending the very criminals that previously he had been busting. I guess a whole lot more money in defending drug dealers than trying to put them away. But anyway, so he's a defense attorney. So she asked me, what do you want to do as an adult for a career? And I didn't know. I had never thought about it. So I said, I guess I'll become a defense attorney. And she said, no, you won't. She said, there are enough lawyers trying to keep criminals out of jail. If you go into law, you need to become a prosecutor and put these people away. And I said, okay. I didn't really know what the difference was, what a prosecutor did. Well, I'm like, okay, yes, ma'am. And she said, until you beat up the gang leader, they're not going to have your respect, and they're not going to leave you alone. She said they're not going to stop. And so she said, you need to take karate. Go home, tell your parents to enroll you in karate. So that's what I did. And that's what they did. At that point, I had moved from Kendall to Homestead and was living in an area called Country Walk. And if you're from South Florida, you know Country Walk is famous for two things. One was the Hurricane Andrew, when it came through, just demolished Country Walk. And the other thing was the Foosters, I think were their names, in my neighborhood down there at Country Walk. These are the people that went to prison for, they were running an illegal daycare and committing acts of ritual satanic abuse against the kids. And this was part of that big satanic panic era of the 80s. That was my neighborhood. But anyway, we had a local like strip mall and country club there, and they had Shotokan karate classes. It was close enough for me to ride my bicycle. My parents weren't going to take me to it, but I could ride my bike down there. And so I started, and I did well, and I stuck with it, and I did martial arts for 9 years straight, both in Florida as well as when I moved back up to North Carolina permanently, and went to high school in North Carolina. And I got really good. And I've shown a couple clips of me from my martial arts days, doing the jump spinning kicks. Before shows back when I was a fire dancer, out on the stage, they'd have me. They'd have there's one guy, Jason. He'd put a cigarette in his mouth and light it, and other times he'd put a beer can, a soda can on his head. But I'd jump up and do a spinning kick in the air, spinning crescent kick, and either knock the cigarette out of his mouth without hitting his nose or his face, or knock the can off his head. If I could touch it, if I could touch anything with my hand, if I could reach up, then I could kick it. That was kind of how I gauged my the height there. But anyway, I got really good at martial arts, and in high school, again, I never went looking for trouble, but I had the reputation as the guy that would help you out if you were getting bullied. And so, nerds, geeks, people playing D&D, they'd come to me and say, "Hey, this guy's won't leave me alone. He keeps, he'll slap me or he'll do this or whatever." And so I'd go talk with him and say, "Look, this guy's not bothering you. Leave him alone." Yeah, fancy cooks are no good in a dangerous fight. And that's back when I had moved from Shotokan karate to Taekwondo, Pasaru Taekwondo, where the emphasis was on big kicks and high kicks and all this stuff. And I thought that was cool. And I was in competitions, and I was just kicking butt in competitions. But then I went to this one martial arts retreat where it was a big mix of all different styles. And there was this tiny, tiny little guy. He had a mullet. I mean, he looked ridiculous. Short guy. He was like 5 feet tall, 5'1" maybe. He had a mullet. He had a big handlebar, not handlebar, but a big, what do you call those? The mustache that, great big thick thing going down there. But anyway, he was there, and they had this one part of the retreat where the host, who was, big time champion in the area, big guy, where they would take turns. They had the black belts, the senseis, the various senseis of the different styles, form a circle around him, and then they'd take turns moving in and attacking him. Not hard, but well enough to where he'd have to fight off different attackers from different angles. And he was tall. He was well over 6 feet tall. And this little guy, Rick, Sensei Rick, as short as he was doing the craziest crap I had ever seen. Untouchable. And no big kicks, nothing, no flourishing moves. I was like, that's crazy. And so we were all staying in these like these barracks at this retreat, and I wanted to meet him. I was black belt in Taekwondo, and I wanted to meet him, and so I went asking around and said, "Where's this Rick guy?" And they said, "Oh, he's not staying in the camp. He stays up in the woods." I said, "What?" I said, "Oh yeah, he's one of these survivalist types." So I tracked him down. He wasn't far. He was up in the woods. This is up in the mountains of North Carolina. And he had made his own campsite. He showed me where, like, he had created his own rope. Like, he got there, he stripped bark off the tree, birch bark or something, I don't know what it was, wove it together and made his own rope. And he had brought a tarp, but he had gathered whatever plants that were there to squeeze and get the oils and waterproof this tarp that he slept under. And it was crazy. And so I was talking with him privately, and so he showed me some stuff. And I'm like, dude, take me on. I'm coming to you for training. And that's when I quit. I quit Taekwondo and went to him. And he showed me. He was like, give me your best shot. And he wasn't that tall, but I was giving him the best kicks I could. High kicks, toward his head. These things that always worked in tournaments. And over, he'd just duck it, and he'd give me the fist to the groin. I'm like, what the heck? And his main style was Silam Kung Fu, but he had trained over the years in multiple styles, and had black belts and everything. And so I started training with him, and that's when I stopped doing the high kicks and learning. Trained Kung Fu, I took Tai Chi from him, lots of weapons. He incorporated a whole lot of Filipino stick fighting into it, Arnis Filipino stick fighting. And we did not worry about belts. There was no belt advancement. It was, you learn how to fight using as many different styles as you could. And that's when for me, things really exploded, and I really started to understand, okay, I'm not doing the martial arts sports stuff that looks good, but actually doesn't work in a real fight. People that have black belts in so many of these styles go up against somebody in a street fight and just get pummeled because the people don't know, oh yeah, I'm supposed to obey some kind of arbitrary rules, and the typical martial artist is conditioned to pull their punches, to not punch all the way through because you don't want to hurt your, people in class, and you don't try and hurt your opponent in tournaments and stuff like that. And you've got the point system, head, body, torso. You don't hit in the back of the head or anything like that. You don't grab hair. But with Rick, it was anything goes. Anything goes. And we did, he taught me some, I don't know how to say it. I don't want to say darker stuff, but he taught me some ugly stuff. So anyway, in high school, I really enjoyed not being a tough guy, because I would always approach these bullies privately, because when you've got eyes on you, that's when bullies feel emboldened, and I didn't want to humiliate him, but I would go and talk with him and say, leave this guy alone. And usually, because of my reputation, they knew, all right, and that was it. From time to time, they would give me some lip, and I'd have to say, I'm going to step in for this kid, for this guy, if you don't leave him alone. And then you're going to have to deal with me. And they're like, why don't you stay out of my business? I'm like, I just can't. I can't let you do it. I can't let you pick on this kid. And anyway, almost always things were resolved without any kind of violence. But there was one person who had actually raped a girl. And he was a bad guy. He had been held back a couple times from graduating. And he wasn't right in the head. And so he came pushing past me and shoved a girl into the lockers one day. And so I said, hey, man, don't let me see you do that crap again. And he waited. He later on, like a month later, came up behind me, hit me in the side of the head, across my temple here, with a lead pipe. Well, I don't know if it was lead. It was a pipe. Whacked me in the head, and I didn't go fully unconscious, but I lost my sight. I lost my sight for like half an hour. But while I was standing there against the wall and I couldn't see, he popped me a handful of times in the mouth, and you can't see. I don't know if you can see right there. Got a scar from where it knocked my tooth through my lip. It was pretty ugly, but you know. But this is going way back to what I was talking about earlier. About loving your enemies. This is also the time in my life when I had really gotten into faith, trying to develop my faith. This is when I found God, was in my teenage years. And I struggled because after he had whacked me a couple times in the mouth, he went and jumped in his truck and left school. And I knew I could beat him up. I knew I could get revenge. And I actually talked with Rick. And this is, you may have heard me mention this before. We actually talked about, because I was telling him, Rick was kind of like my father figure at that time. And I was like, I don't know what to do. You know, I could go back and get him, but that'd be revenge. And I'm having a real problem with that because, you know, I'm trying to live these Christian principles. But at the same time, it's so freaking unjust. There's no way I can let this go. What do I do? And Rick, who did not have the same morals that I was aspiring to, suggested that we go to his house. He had been kicked out of his own house. He was living with somebody else. But go to his house. He had a new pickup truck. And his recommendation was that we fill his gas tank with with a sheet, light it on fire, blow up his truck, and when he comes out, beat the hell out of him. That, I'm serious. That is what Rick recommended. He said, I guarantee you he'll never bother you again. And I said, I don't know. And like I'm saying, I was learning. Rick, after I had trained with him for a couple years, we were learning. You know, he was teaching me some. That's why I said some dark stuff. But I also went to my pastor, my minister, and said the same thing. I said, you know, I'm struggling with this. I've never experienced this before, where I have such fury inside me that this guy, I said, I stopped being bullied years ago. And I feel like if I don't respond, if I don't go beat this guy up, then I'm giving in to bullying. I'm letting myself be bullied. But at the same time, the scriptures say, you know, to turn the other cheek. And I was confused. I said, what do I do? And he gave me his counsel. And in the end, I didn't get revenge. Although there was, there's more to the story. He later on, and this is why, like, it was such a struggle for me, because what happened next, sometime later, was we used to own a Blazer, a Chevy Blazer, a white one, and it had a visor on. It was very easy to see it coming. And this guy was, I'm telling you, this guy was psychotic. But I used to drive it from time to time. He had seen me drive it, but it was my mom's car. But anyway, he ran my mom's husband. She was with her. She was with not my dad, not Rambo, with her third husband. My mom's been married a number of times, and ran them off the road, thinking that it was me in the truck. Ran them off the road. She was pregnant at the time, and when I found out about it, it's one thing to do something to me. It's another thing to go after family. And she kept telling me, she knew she could see the fury in me, and she kept saying, "Don't, Jake, don't." And this is when to put things back in the right timeline. This is when I talked with Rick, saying, "I don't know what to do," and that's when he proposed that we go blow up his truck. To put things in context, it's not that he said, "Oh, you got punched in the mouth. Let's go, let's go blow up his truck." This was when the guy had run my mother off the road. And he was like, people like that, you got to teach them a lesson. But anyway, she kept saying, my mom was saying, "Jake, let me handle it. We're going to, go to court." They went, if you get involved in this, you're going to make it worse. They went to court, and I was, crazy story. I went to court because they were going to call me as a witness. Even though I wasn't there, they were going to try and bring me in and make it relevant to his previous attack on me. And but the judge would not allow my mom's attorney to pretty much say anything. It was clear that the judge knew this guy and his family. And the judge said, "As far as I'm concerned, this guy's as clean as the pure driven snow." That phrase sticks in my head. I remember sitting there in court thinking there is no freaking justice. Now, sitting in the back of the court, or maybe it was up on the side, I don't know. Total coincidence that day that my ex-stepfather, Rambo, who was the defense attorney, he was in court that day. And so after the judge, hammers that gavel and dismisses the case, I was standing there still going through this, I just stunned. And Rambo walked over to me and he was looking at me. And I said, "I just don't know what to do." And he looked at me and he raised his eyebrows and he said, "You know what to do." Which was his way of, remember, this guy was a CIA assassin. So I had so much encouragement from my father figures encouraging me to go after this guy. And I will say that I saw him shortly after this, and almost under my breath to hold my rage, I told him, I walked up to him and I said, If you ever go near my mother again, I'll kill you." And I meant it at that time. And he walked away. He knew it was going to be bad. But this guy carried a gun with him in his truck, so a handgun. So this is really bad guy. But anyway, so this was a time in my life where I was really I was struggling with this. There was no justice in the court system. I had been humiliated. I knew I could flatten this guy in seconds. But should I? And this is why I was saying in the beginning, this was really a time where my faith developed. This is when I had to accept the will of God in place. That's when I had to, it was too big for me. It was too big for me. if it was left up to me, I didn't know what to do or how to do it. And so that's when I accepted. Jesus said to not seek vengeance, to let things go. And it wasn't easy, but I did. And there were a couple other incidents later in life where my children were injured, and I went through that same thing. So that's why I believe that there are times when you stand and fight, and you defend your family, and you do what you need to. But when matters are over and there's no imminent danger, and there's not a likelihood of additional problems, what do? Do you live by the law of the jungle? Do you take matters into your own hands? Do you have this tit for tat relationship like we see between the militants in Gaza and Israel, where they're always one-upping each other, and in the process the innocent are the ones that suffer? It is so I'm just saying, I have learned for myself, as difficult as it is, and I don't know if you can tell listening to me, I feel like I still have this, in a way, regret that I didn't go back and just beat that guy to a pulp. But at the same time, not doing so and struggling against it and trying to do what I believed that Jesus wanted me to do has had a very big impact on who I became as an adult. And so as you see a lot of the videos I do, a lot of the things I care about, a whole lot of it revolves around my sense of the need for justice for people who are being oppressed or bullied or injured by more powerful parties. I have a passion for it. I have a passion for standing up for the Palestinian people because I recognize that they are being victimized. And that's also why, at the same time, I don't buy in, like so many others do out there in social media. I don't get into the Jew hate. I get lumped in by, Canary Mission and the others that don't distinguish between someone like me and, someone who's just a raging, genuine neo-Nazi who has, swastika tattoos and whatever. But I don't get into it. I don't get into this, these hateful things. I don't use the same rhetoric. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in mocking the Jewish people. I don't believe in making fun of them, like big noses or whatever. I have never, you'll find thousands of tweets from me on Twitter. I have never once tweeted out something like, that caricature of a Jew with a big nose, the money grubbing, the drawing, that kind of stuff. I don't do that. I don't participate in that. Because I disagree with what the hardcore Zionists are doing to the Palestinians, but I will not hate my enemies. And I think I've got enough understanding to know that, just like here in America, not everybody is the same. There are a lot of Jews who want justice for the Palestinians. They want to have them to have their own state, so on and so forth. And that's why I am willing to stand with peace-loving Jewish people in solidarity toward that common cause of trying to bring about a peaceful resolution, and at the very least, the ability for the Palestinian people to stand on their own 2 feet with dignity, and having their basic human rights respected. So anyway, sorry, I have no idea how I got off on this tangent. I didn't. Who got me started on this? Anyway, well, listen, I think I'm going to wrap it up here in a second. Maybe I'll read some comments. I would, since I'm here on my main channel, my big channel, I'm trying to do a lot more. I had gotten away from posting on this channel because there's no no income from it. So I do have to, you know, beg for some donations. So please forgive me. I hate doing it, but you know, research and reporting is a passion of mine. My time is the product. You know, that the time, the research, and the accurate reporting of facts to you is the service I provide. Of course, it's free on YouTube, but I do ask for those that can chip in a little bit to support, because you know this kind of reporting is very much suppressed. Most channels get taken down, and mine will at some point. But in the meantime, if you can support my reporting, go to patreon.com/endtimesnewsreport. Sign up to become a monthly sponsor. $5 a month would be great. Or if you like that I'm willing to talk about the the reality of the situation over in the Middle East, then you make a bigger. You can make a single donation at paypal.me/endtimesnewsreport. You see it down there scrolling. And fan mail. I love getting letters. You can send that to Jake Morphonios, P.O. Box 1333, Kernersville, North Carolina, 27285. I appreciate being part of Team Blackstone with you guys. It's awesome. T-Von Sanders said, I just got here. Summarize. Summary is 2 rockets were fired from Gaza into Israel. Israel responded by striking a number of targets in Gaza, and we're waiting to see if it will escalate beyond this point. That's kind of there's a quick summary. Let me just peek real quick, see if I see any other news. At this point, they're probably asleep over there. Unless, of course, you're someone living in the area that's been struck. I'm not seeing, just doing a super quick look, I'm not seeing any major news. To add much of anything to what we've already discussed tonight. So anyway, all right, guys. Well, thank you for hanging out. He was asking about explain the rapture. I'm wrapping it up. That could get us going. There are different ways of looking at it, and I want to give thought to how I would present it, because different people feel passionately about this topic. People that are religious, evangelicals are quite strong in their views, and then there are more moderate Christian views, and lots. And then there's just different ways. In a nutshell, in a just basic nutshell, at least from the evangelical perspective, is that in the end times you have all this terrible stuff happening. Events are getting worse and worse in the world. There's getting ready to be a great war and all these cosmic calamities happening on the earth. Stars falling from heaven, the moon turning red like blood, and massive earthquakes that shake the whole earth all at once and kill a bunch of people, and just bloodshed and mayhem and all this. But God, Jesus, will prevent the faithful from having to go through that by, even though this word's not in the Bible, the evangelicals call it rapturing, by taking them up from the earth before the destruction happens. And then you get into the nuances of it. There's debate between is this rapture to happen before the tribulation, this great tribulation, before it happens, part way through it, or later on. There's, mid-trib, pre-trib. There's just different ways of thinking about it. And it's all speculative. Everyone's got their own theories and whatever. And so my thought on it is this: I'm not afraid to go through hard times. That's whether I am the problem I see with so many people that get wrapped up in this rapture idea is they have the attitude of, I can do this now, or I can neglect this now, because it doesn't matter anyway. Jesus is going to take me to heaven before whatever. And I remember this back during, you guys remember Y2K? 1999, America was freaking out because all of the when the computers were built, the programming was set up with the year in a lot of programs as 2 digits. So when you're in year 99 and it's getting ready to flip over to the year 2000, is that going to reset all these programs, crash computers and financial systems? And it was going to be this big apocalyptic end to society as we knew it. People were buying up food storage and everything like crazy because this was going to be it. Alex Jones was, just really pushing the fear porn. And so during that time, I remember talking with some evangelical friends, Pentecostals, and they were buying all this stuff. And I said, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? And this one said, it doesn't matter if I go way into debt. I'm never going to have to pay it because the rapture is getting ready to happen. And then, Jesus will take me up and I'm not going to have to worry about debt. So I can spend now. And I was like, that's just ridiculous. That is so irresponsible and ridiculous. But that is how so many people live, that obsess over the rapture. There are different ways of doing that, of being irresponsible in the moment, because the assumption is I'll never have to face the consequences. So what does it matter anyway? So that's why I recognize the arguments in favor of different ways of interpreting everything. I think that what matters is to me it's inconsequential. I will live my life as best I know how, and what happens, happens. My faith is in Jesus Christ, regardless of what happens. Good, bad, anything in between, I'm going to hold to Him regardless. And if that means I get taken up to heaven before some great tribulation, so be it. But the truth is, I've thought about this deeply. I don't necessarily want to be taken up. That is not my desire. If there were going to be great calamities, and it was going to leave a remnant of people on the earth, there's going to be great destruction and trouble and whatever left behind, I don't want to be taken up. At least if I'm young enough, physically capable enough of helping people. I would rather be someone who remains here and can either minister to the people or just help people during that time of crisis. It's not my nature to want to leave when there's a problem. I'm sure it would be ugly and it'd be terrible, but I would prefer to remain so that I could try and help people toward the light, help them to make sense of what has happened, and even if there's no evangelizing that happens, just to be behind and help people in need. Yeah, and if possible, lead people to Christ. But Yeah, Galactic Minds mentions it's Ethiopia collapsing in civil war now after Trump gave green light to Egypt. There's some ugly, ugly stuff. I won't get into it tonight, but maybe I can talk about that in another video. But yeah, there's a lot of atrocity in Egypt. All right, everyone. Well, I'm going to call it a night. It's 1:45 Eastern time. So it's prime time for me to go upstairs, start doing my dad duty, taking care of the twins so my wife can sleep. Usually they wake up between 1 and 2, and that's when I start my shift with the girls. Hey, thank you, Squirrel and Wesson. Good night to you. Take care. God bless. Thank you, Alejandro. Appreciate it, brother. Thank you for your help tonight. Alejandro is my buddy on Twitter. He's always liking my tweets, even my stupid ones. Thank you, brother. And hey, Bill, Iron Man medal. I was so busy yapping on there, Bill, I didn't see you. Love you, bro. Thank you for the kind words. All right, everybody. To all of you who have listened in, thank you. I ask that you subscribe to my channel. Click the subscribe button. Hit the bell icon. And share my stuff with people. Help me expand my my reach here. And for all of you who are just participating in the chat, thank you guys. I appreciate you all, and hope you sleep well and have a great night. And I'll talk with you guys next time. For Blackstone Intelligence, I'm Jake Morphonios, signing out.